Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday, August 26th, 2022. It is time for another show, but it's time to do it without any electrical power available to KITM World Headquarters. How do you like that? So this is the big test of all the backup equipment that I bought. How much do I love you? How much do I love doing the show in the middle of a power outage? We'll find out. I bought one of the things that your contributions have made possible. So I bought a giant battery backup for the computers that run the show. But now I'm worried a little bit because I bought a somewhat less giant battery backup for the modem that provides the modem and router that provides our internet service, but it appears to be up. I forget even where the hell we get our internet service from these days, but I guess it's not the electric company. So it hasn't taken out the ISP, so that seems good, but we have no idea what the power outage is. So, the local reports from the power companies, they haven't even identified what the problem is or exactly how wide it is. And for now, because they don't know what it is, they're saying that they expect to restore power in the afternoon. So, I don't know. We'll just test it. And Justice will stay on alert. And if we just drop off the air at some point, he'll put on some music to keep you company. And we'll see. But thanks to your support and your patronage, there was actually funding available to buy bunch of battery backup units to try and make it through. Well, the idea was to make it through something like, at 10:15 the power went out and it stayed out for the rest of the show, but we were able to continue on and finish the show because we had the battery backup. But I did buy one thinking, well, what if the power outage is at 9 o'clock? What I didn't really anticipate is what if the power outage is at 8:30? We might just make it across the 2-hour line, but what about warming the things up and getting the feed going? And, well, we'll see. And then we'll also find out whether we need to get more money together to get an even bigger battery backup for the modem and router downstairs, too. But I think that doesn't eat up a tremendous amount of power. And I don't think it requires any more power to broadcast lots of news stories than it does to broadcast fewer of them either. So I don't even have to economize that way. However, I'm trying to keep the refrigerator closed, so that has screwed up my breakfast a little bit. And I'm trying to, of course, the stove didn't light to make the tea, but we managed to get it lighted with the lighter. So that's okay. So we can have little, tea, oatmeal, whatever. Not that I left any time to have that damn oatmeal, but maybe during one of the breaks. Who knows? Anyway, that's the big news, and the rest of the news is I might not get to the rest of the news before all goes kablooey. I also had to run around and try and figure out how do I silence the alarm on the battery backup that beeps every minute or so to let you know that, I guess, you're still eating up your power. And I found that, so that won't interrupt the show either. So we're in pretty good shape. And now it's just a big mystery. How long can we go? And if it's a successful 2 hours, I'm going to be very pleased and very happy at the purchase of the battery backup. And so will you be, I guess. Although the last second thought I had before going on the air is, what am I doing? This should be like a day off. I should just say, oh, sorry, everybody. Can't do it. But, I don't know. I like the idea of demonstrating the power of having prepared for an event like this, because the show's important somehow. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. I'm a little discombobulated by this whole thing. It's also dark here. I mean, the sun is up, but we're in the part of KITM headquarters that leaves us in the afternoon sun. So it's a little darker than usual here. But as you know, computers light up largely and project their images. So we should be able to read the stories that we had set aside for you, and there are so many. Where shall we begin? Well, the former guy remains former, thankfully, and is doing a lot of dumb things, though, and he likes staying in the news. And I feel like we shouldn't acknowledge that and serve that sometimes, but on the other hand, sometimes it's such a pleasure to talk about how poorly he's doing in court and in handling the emergencies of his finally being held somewhat accountable. Anyway, there are a couple of stories I would like to share on that and expand on some of the things we heard about during the earlier part of the week. And let's see, I'll begin in reverse chronological order of what's stored in Pocket, because I have no other organizational basis at this point because the power outage has thrown me off completely. Yes, oh, by the way, an excellent suggestion here from our friend the mighty OCD, who says you should just start drinking, which is a possibility. That doesn't need to be refrigerated in any way, and none of the stuff that I would go to ordinarily is although there's quite a bit of refrigerated liquor in there too, which we really got to get rid of at some point. But at any rate, he says break out the Manischewitz, which it is Friday, so there's some basis for it, but it's a little early for is it ever too early for Manischewitz? I don't know. Not a great drinking experience. But anyway, that's an idea, and at some point, I suppose, if I begin to lament whether or not the battery will last, I suppose I could drown my sorrows that way. But it is early in the morning. But as Rudy Giuliani says, it's 8 a.m. somewhere, so you might as well start drinking. Apparently I made that joke a couple of days ago, and somebody thought that was actually hilarious, and I forgot all about the fact that I even made that reference. But that's one of my favorite things, is being reminded of jokes that I made offhand and I totally forgot about that people enjoyed. All right, let's see. How about some of the stories that we were going to tell you? I remember I mentioned to you that there were some stories. Here's one from, interestingly enough, the Fox Business Network. By the way, on the Fox side of news, I had an interesting experience yesterday. I showed my son Newsmax on TV here, and he just couldn't believe it. What is going on here? What are they talking about? What are these stories? Where do they get this? You can't say that. That broadcaster just can't. You can't say that as a news broadcaster. What is he doing? It was very interesting. It was the Eric Bolling show, so it was an opinion show, but he was he was struck by every story that he was covering, and mostly the fact that it didn't happen. What is he talking about? And also the fact that he said duh to something struck him as very odd, and it really is. Although, duh, honestly. Anyway, so Fox, this was Fox. He's seen that before, but Fox Business Network has this story, which is kind of funny, except, there's a bit of a falling out between Fox and Trump these days, but at some point in the recent past, they might have passed on reporting this story, which is that Trump's social media app, you remember Truth Social, is facing what they call financial fallout. That means they suck and they have no money, and so they're not paying any of their vendors. But on the other hand, even if they didn't suck and they were great, if they're owned by Trump, they probably wouldn't be paying any of their vendors. That's just a cardinal rule of doing business with Trump. And honestly, I'm surprised that there's anybody still surprised that could happen to them. But on the other hand, if you're working with Trump, good. I'm glad it surprises you. You're stupid and you deserve to suffer. All right. Truth Social's finances, it says, may be in significant disarray, sources say, which, as I understood it, was something only Democrats could be in disarray. But at any rate, it has turned out to be the case that it's these particular Republicans have this problem as well. Former President Donald Trump's social media outfit, Truth Social, is locked in a bitter battle with one of its vendors, claiming that the platform is stiffing the company out of more than $1 million in contractually obligated payments. Fox Business, which cares about these things, has learned. And that's an interesting thing to learn, quite honestly. And, it's par for the course. And I don't know how bitter the battle really is. It's probably them saying, we're screwed, because I've now realized that there's stories about Trump not paying his bills all over the place. Why didn't I read this? It was our own fault for getting involved with these guys. Though we should not blame the victim here. Because, well, for several reasons. Anyway, if the allegations are true, of course, Eric Bowling might say, duh, they would suggest that Truth Social's finances are in significant disarray. People with direct knowledge of the matter say. Those of us with indirect knowledge would probably say the same. Internet infrastructure company RightForge. Guess where they might lean politically. RightForge is said to be among Truth Social's largest vendors and creditors, these people say. And I bet these people are from RightForge. In October, RightForge announced it entered into an agreement to host Truth Social, which Trump helped create after he was banned by Twitter following the January 6th riots. And probably a more accurate way of saying it is that Trump went along for the ride. Somebody else, created it, perhaps at his direction. Somebody get me another social media platform. Whatever it takes, just do the thing and then don't pay the bills. And then, how can we afford such a thing? Stiff them. That's how we can afford it. Go. So somebody else did the work, and he lent his name to it, like with his real estate empire. And now he's not paying them, like with his real estate empire. RightForge now contends that Truth Social has reneged on its contractually obligated monthly payments for setting up the platform's web servicing infrastructure, according to 3 people with direct knowledge of the matter. And of course, already all of you are saying, why don't they just shut it off? And I don't know. But the answer is probably, well, they probably hope they'll get paid at some point later on if they just stretch it out a little longer. And that's probably what Truth Social is telling them. But it's not an essential service. There's hardly anybody on it. Cut it off. Just be done with it. Make them go on Gab or something. They'll let them do that for free. Anyway, these people say RightForge contends that Truth Social has made just 3 payments and ceased making any payments since around March. And now being August, that's quite a while. RightForge claims that Truth Social owes it around $1.6 million and is threatening legal action to recoup the money, these people add. Now, of course, Trump will be out there. I'm threatening legal action. I'm going to sue RightForge for, what the hell is it? All right, for defamation. That's his favorite thing. And how dare they? And this is all a lie. RightForge CEO Martin Avila, look him up, find out if he deserves this or not, declined to comment on any private matters, but wouldn't deny the disagreement between the two entities. He added in a statement, our founding vision, is to make a second internet to support American ideas online. So yes, we were correct in thinking that RightForge meant something. RightForge believes in the mission of President Trump's free speech platform. That's the problem right there. It's free. That's your misconception. You said it's for free speech. So why should I be paying you? It should be free. And that's hard to argue with. Because he's hard to argue with because he's got an empty skull. Anyway, their free speech platform, they wish to continue supporting the president in his media endeavors, and that's why they're doing it. I mean, they may very well have been founded as a lost leader type thing, that we're going to just take it on the chin and burn the money to keep Truth Social going because that guy that we were talking about yesterday, whose name we never learned to pronounce, whether it's Barry Seed or whatever, that we'll just use his money and let Truth Social keep working for free, and maybe we'll pay our people, maybe we won't. A spokesman for Truth Social also would not deny the matter when contacted by Fox Business. A spokesman for Trump had no comment. Since its launch in February, and remember, it stopped paying in March. Since its launch in February, Truth Social has been the main conduit for the former president to make public announcements and attack critics. While its reach pales in comparison to Twitter's estimated 200 million plus active daily users, interest in the platform has peaked recently in the aftermath of the FBI raid on Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. Truth Social is part of Trump Media and Technology Group, a holding company for the platform that, according to regulatory filings, has broader plans to expand into streaming and other services to promote Trump's political brand. Trump is said to hold a controlling interest in Truth Social, though his monetary investment is said to be negligible to non-existent, and he is not in control of its day-to-day operations. So, essentially, again, this is a company that was gifted to him by people looking to curry favor. essentially. In January, former Republican California Representative Devin Nunes was named the CEO of Trump Media, with Trump described in regulatory filings as its chair. Nunes didn't return an email for comment, but Truth Social's launch has been anything but smooth. Its early rollout was plagued with technological glitches. Now it's plagued with moneyological glitches, I guess. More recently, its planned merger with Digital World Acquisition Corp. Remember this one? The Special Purpose Acquisition Company, or SPAC, right? Has been put off indefinitely. I did not remember this. Amid various probes into its business dealings, which is a problem when you're dealing with Trump, including a Justice Department grand jury probe and an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. You will lose money when you get involved with Trump. I mean, that's just a given. And I think they may actually know that, or may have known that when they went into it. But they're complaining a little bit now. Digital World and Trump Media have said they are cooperating with the probes, even if they appear to be a significant stumbling block in completing the merger. In a recent regulatory filing, Digital World said it is seeking shareholder approval to delay the September 8th deadline for combining the companies until next year as the investigations swirl. In the same filing, Digital World said, if President Trump becomes less popular, or there are further controversies that damage his credibility or the desire of people to use a platform associated with him, and from which he will derive financial benefit, Trump Media's results of operations, as well as the outcome of the proposed business combination, could be adversely affected. I mean, that's a minimal statement. Okay, anyway. A representative for Digital World didn't return an email or telephone call for comment. Shares of Digital World have declined more than 42% since the beginning of the year, and that's good news because murdery trader Green invested very heavily in it, as I recall. And I'd love to see her money burnt to ashes. Trump himself faces mounting legal woes, including a Justice Department probe. Did you know about this? Over his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. A New York State civil probe into the finances of the Trump... Oh, well, they didn't want me to finish reading this article for you. It has jumped back to the top. Like I switched pop-up ads, and it just shot me straight back up to the top. Where was I in this? Got to scroll back down. Right, is New York State civil probe into finances of the Trump Organization, his real estate and branding businesses, and most recently a DOJ probe into whether he mishandled classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate that led to the recent FBI raid. Trump says the investigations are politically motivated as he prepares for a possible White House bid in 2024, while traffic, oh boy, they're really jumping around all over the place. While traffic to Truth Social has been spiking amid controversies, it's unclear if any of this is helping its bottom line. In a May regulatory filing, Digital World stated there is no operating history upon which to base any assumption as to the likelihood that Trump Media will prove successful, and Trump Media may never generate any operating revenues or achieve profitable operations. If TMTG is unsuccessful in addressing these risks, its business will most likely fail. Well, yeah, but that probably was the design in the first place. So Devin Nunes will take a paycheck. Trump will pay himself some sort of revenue out of this, and then it'll all evaporate when people get tired of just throwing their money away. Even though that might have been what they planned to do in the first place. But eventually they'll tire of it. The filing added that Truth Social doesn't yet generate revenues and may begin to generate revenues from the Truth Social platform as early as 2023, maybe. Anyway, people at RightForge believe that their business contretemps with Truth Social are rooted in the platform's business problems. The three people tell Fox Business. RightForge bills itself as an internet company that caters to conservatives, an alternative to the progressive elite that dominates Silicon Valley and allows for Nazi websites to continually operate, and for that matter, for Nazis to continue to operate on regular social media too. Only Trump is the one who finds himself permanently banned, which is fine. But I think they could expand their work in that respect. In an interview with Axios in October 2021, announcing his partnership with Truth Social, Avila, the guy from RightForge, said, "If you believe that the president should be deplatformed, we believe that you're not really interested in living in a free country. And that's really what we're all about, is making sure that America stays true to its core ideas and that the marketplace of ideas stays open, even if it doesn't pay the rent or the utility bills." He added that RightForge was working toward creating an infrastructure so that Truth Social could compete with Twitter and have more than 75 million users. "We're laying the groundwork for that," Avila told the publication. "That's why there will be servers everywhere." Okay. It's unclear if Trump Social is having issues with other vendors over payment for services, these people add. One person with knowledge of the matter said Trump Social informed RightForge that it stopped making payments over breach of contract. Fox Business couldn't determine the alleged breach, and I guess neither could RightForge, or they would have said so, I assume, unless they really did feel that they were at fault and they were just lying and saying something else was driving all of this. So, okay, there you have it. The marketplace for ideas involves the exchange of no dollars and certainly contains no cents. So I suppose it's par for the course. Something not surprising given who the players are and what their history has been. So that was interesting. What else is happening? A big news story yesterday that we probably don't have time to fit all of it in, but that's okay. We can continue on the other side if there's any batteries left. This was big news. The New York Times reporting that a Florida pair, that would be a Florida man and a Florida woman, that's not the only combination that Florida people come in, but this particular combination was, what? I don't know. I don't know whether they have any sort of relationship beyond trying to steal stuff and make money, but that's relationship enough. Florida pair pleads guilty in theft of Biden's daughter's diary. We had more or less forgotten this story. We reported it when it first came out, and of course it involves James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, and apparently they're going to be in some trouble in this too. Amy Harris, who spells her name the funny way, the French way, A-I-M-E-E, Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander admitted to participating in a conspiracy. Ooh, a conspiracy. That's I have some conspiracy music here somewhere. That's it, the old familiar one. We can get back into another soundboard day here. Well, they admitted to participating in a conspiracy in which Ashley Biden's diary ended up in the hands of the conservative group Project Veritas near the end of the 2020 campaign. And to what tremendous effect at that. Totally changed the outcome of the election. Adam Goldman and Michael Schmidt reported on this one. Schmidt busy messing up every bit of reporting that the Times has got. I don't know. He's been having a rough time lately at Empty Wheel's hands, and probably deservedly so. But anyway, what can you do? Federal prosecutors presented new evidence on Thursday implicating the conservative group Project Veritas in the theft of a diary and items belonging to Ashley Biden, President Biden's daughter, laying out in court papers their fullest account yet of how allies of President Donald J. Trump tried to use the diary to undercut Mr. Biden in the final days of the 2020 campaign. The court papers were filed in connection with the guilty pleas on Thursday of two Florida residents who admitted in federal court in Manhattan that they had stolen the diary and sold it to Project Veritas. Nasty. Prosecutors directly tied Project Veritas to the theft, of Ms. Biden's items in the court papers, saying that an employee for the group had directed the defendants to steal additional items to authenticate the diary and paid them additional money after receiving them, because of how journalistic they are, of course. Citing a text message between the defendants who pleaded guilty, Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander, prosecutors provided new insights into how Project Veritas tried to authenticate the diary and what the group had planned to do with it. They are in a sketchy business, and here they are taking what's literally a stolen diary and info, Mr. Kurlander wrote, adding that Project Veritas was trying to make a story that will ruin Ms. Biden's life and try and affect the election. Federal prosecutors in Manhattan have been investigating the theft of the diary and Project Veritas's role in it since they were alerted to the theft just days before the 2020 election, as the group sought to interview Mr. Biden about the contents of the diary. The investigation has spurred questions about how much the First Amendment can protect a group that claims it is a news media organization, even though its methods fall far outside traditional journalistic norms, you think? And it has put Mr. Biden's Justice Department in a highly unusual position of investigating a crime in which the president's daughter was a victim. At the same time, it is weighing whether to charge his son, Hunter Biden, in a separate case involving potential tax and foreign lobbying violations. In their pleas, Ms. Harris, 40, and Mr. Kurlander, 58, admitted they took part in a conspiracy to transport stolen materials from Florida, where Ms. Biden had been living, to New York, where Project Veritas has its headquarters. Harris and Kurlander stole personal property from an immediate family member of a candidate for national political office. Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said in a statement, they sold the property to an organization in New York for $40,000 and even returned to take more of the victim's property when asked to do so, Mr. Williams said. Harris and Kurlander sought to profit from their theft of another person's personal property, and now they stand convicted of a federal felony as a result. As part of the investigation, the authorities have executed a search warrant. Can you believe it? Oh, tyranny of it all. A search warrant at the homes of two former employees and Project Veritas's founder, James O'Keefe. Good, I like that. And they have obtained a trove of the group's emails from around the time it purchased the story. Apparently, they also must have come into possession of that surplus of dildos that James O'Keefe keeps around the house. I don't know what the reason that he holds on to the surplus now is, but you remember that he had the fantastic idea of trying to set up, was it a New York Times or some elite media reporter by luring her onto his houseboat, which he then filled with sex toys and dildos, and I don't know exactly what he thought that was going to do to the reporter that showed up rather than to him, but hey. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Still here on Netroots Radio, attempting to eat some non-refrigerated and non-cooked breakfast in the break, and I made a very poor choice, I think. A very chewy granola bar that I really should have gone with something very different, and took a bite, and it was tasted like it was going to be very satisfying and fun to eat, and then I was like, boy, this is taking a long time to chew this. Hey, I'm running out of time. Hey, all I have to wash this down is lukewarm tea. See how I suffer for you. Isn't it great? All right, well, at any rate, so far so good on the batteries. Also, excellent news to find out that James O'Keefe's house was subject to a search warrant. That seems fun. And who knows what they turned up when they were on the premises. Anyway, no charges have been filed against Project Veritas at this moment, or any of its operatives, and the group never published the diary. But in a sign that the investigation into the group will continue, the authorities said Mr. Kurlander had agreed to cooperate with the authorities. Ms. Harris's lawyer, Sanford Talkin, declined after the hearing to discuss whether she would cooperate with the authorities, saying she has accepted responsibility for her actions and she looks forward to moving forward with her life. I guess probably not in jail, but I'm sure she wants to move forward. In a brief statement, Project Veritas said its news gathering was ethical and legal, which of course you should take to mean it was unethical and illegal. That's the usual MO here. A journalist's lawful receipt of material later alleged to be stolen is routine, commonplace, and protected by the First Amendment, it said. It is unclear what impact the disclosure about Project Veritas's role in the scheme will have on its operations, which are often funded by donors. They'll just donate more money, of course. The pleas mark the first time criminal charges have been filed in the theft of Ms. Biden's diary, which she kept while she recovered from addiction and which contained intimate information about her and her family. I know what I did was wrong and awful, and I apologize, Mr. Kurlander said in court. I sincerely apologize for any actions and know what I did was wrong and illegal, Ms. Harris said. Mr. Kurlander and Ms. Harris, who surrendered to the authorities early Thursday, were released from custody after the hearing. Both are scheduled to be sentenced in December. Ms. Biden had left the diary at a friend's home where she had been staying in Delray Beach, Florida in 2020 and planned to return to retrieve it that year, according to interviews and court documents. After Ms. Biden left, her friend allowed Ms. Harris, who was in a bitter custody dispute and struggling financially, to stay at home, or at the home. Ms. Harris learned that Ms. Biden had been living there and found her belongings, including the diary, in August. She told Mr. Kurlander, who texted her, that they could make a lot of money from the diary and family photos she had also found among Ms. Biden's belongings. Mr. Kurlander, the New York Times has reported, then informed a Trump supporter and fundraiser, Elizabeth Fago, F-A-G-O. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but whatever. Ms. Harris and Mr. Kurlander took the diary to a Trump fundraiser at Ms. Fago's home, where it was passed around, the Times reported last year, an event also documented in the court filing on Thursday. They're such nice people. Before the event, the court papers said Mr. Kurlander texted Ms. Harris, "On Sunday, you may have a chance to make so much money." I mean, it doesn't look good for them. Prosecutors said by that time she had stolen additional items belonging to Ms. Biden. OMG, coming with stuff that neither one of us has seen or spoken about, Ms. Harris texted Mr. Kurlander. I can't wait to show you what Mama has to bring Papa. Blah. That's just gross. All right. Prosecutors said the pair had hoped to sell the items to the Trump campaign, but a representative of the campaign, who was not identified in the court papers, told the pair that they were not interested in buying the property and that they should take it to the FBI instead. Oh, take it to the FBI, period. Instead, the Times has reported Ms. Fago ultimately helped direct Ms. Harris and Mr. Kurlander to Project Veritas. Well, that's interesting. Somebody at the campaign had actually learned the lesson of the previous campaign and said, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to just gladly accept this information. You're supposed to tell them, take it to the FBI. So it's interesting that the lesson of 2016 and Trump-Russia sunk in with somebody. They should identify themselves. They're probably, looking pretty good in all of this. In September, Ms. Harris and Mr. Kurlander traveled to Manhattan to show Project Veritas the diary, telling two operatives for the group that they had found it and other items in the Delray Beach home where Ms. Biden had been staying with a friend. Project Veritas paid for the pair to go to New York and stay at a luxury hotel, prosecutors said. Prosecutors said that a Project Veritas operative wanted more of Ms. Biden's property, don't they all, to try to authenticate the diary and would pay more for those additional items. Mr. Kurlander realized there was an opportunity to make more money from Project Veritas. Kurlander texted Harris, the court filing said, that they had to tread even more carefully and that stuff needs to be gone through by us. If anything worthwhile, it needs to be turned over and must be out of that house. A lot of planning for this theft. Ultimately, Project Veritas paid them $40,000. Prosecutors did not name the Project Veritas employees who met with Harris and Kurlander in New York, but last year the FBI searched the home of Spencer Meads, M-E-A-D-S, a confidant of Mr. O'Keefe. The Times has previously reported that Mr. Meads was sent to Florida to authenticate the diary. Prosecutors said that one of the Project Veritas employees traveled to Florida on the same day that Harris and Kurlander stole the additional items. All three of them met, and Kurlander and Harris gave the Project Veritas operative the items. Kurlander also met with the operative the next day and provided an additional bag, prosecutors said. Project Veritas, which uses deceptive tactics to ensnare targets, like houseboats full of dildos, although they didn't ensnare anybody with that one except himself, undertook a wide-ranging effort to authenticate the diary. As part of that effort, an operative tried to trick Ms. Biden during a phone call into confirming that the diary was hers. Project Veritas later contacted Ms. Biden's lawyers about the diary in an attempt to secure an interview with her father before the election. Ms. Biden's lawyers told the group that the idea that she had abandoned the diary was ludicrous and accused the group of an extortionate effort to secure an interview, according to emails obtained by the Times. Ms. Biden's lawyers then contacted federal prosecutors in Manhattan. So there's some beep beep coming from the battery backup.
Power back on.
Oh, power's back on? Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Let's see if that's what that means. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we're off battery backup, so that's a good beep. And that's good news, and that means I can turn on some lights and see a little bit better here, and I guess that means I'm stuck finishing the show. Thank you, battery backup. And thank you to the good folks at should I mention their name? I paid them good money. But anyway, in case anybody's wondering, it's a cyber power battery backup. Oh, now everything's going to beep. All right, terrific. So everything's coming back on, including the stupid items that we don't even use anymore. But okay, that's good news. I'm glad it's not waiting until the afternoon, and all of our refrigerated and frozen items won't go bad. Though I guess we could buy some more with all the money we made from selling Ashley Biden's, what was it? Right, diary to Project Veritas. Okay, so where were we? Now I'm all discombobulated. Ah, yes, right. The Times, okay, right. So Biden's lawyers then contacted federal prosecutors in Manhattan in the midst of this exchange. A conservative website, National File, don't think I ever heard of them, published excerpts from the diary on October 24th, 2020, and its full contents 2 days later. Still haven't heard of them. The disclosure drew little attention, so there you go. National File said it had obtained the diary from someone at another organization, I wonder which one it was, that was unwilling to publish it in the campaign's final days. Mr. O'Keefe said was said to be furious that the diary ended up in the hands of National File. In early November 2020, days after the election, Project Veritas arranged for Ms. Biden's items to be taken to the Delray Beach Police Department, where a lawyer was captured on video saying the belongings might have been stolen. The police then contacted the FBI. So that wasn't a great play. But, he was probably furious that he was scooped by the National File, because that meant, I guess at some point he decided he wasn't going to publish the things because he knew how much trouble he could be in. And that the publication by National File was probably only going to start the ball rolling on getting him in more trouble. But it probably also meant that somebody from Project Veritas had turned this information over to National File. And that's one of the problems with working with young ideologues like this, that if you make the decision that you need to protect yourself legally somehow, for the first time, by not publishing this diary, but some true believer at Project Veritas says, no, it must be published because the American people deserve to know the truth about what Ashley Biden thought about something or other, because politics, I will smuggle this thing out of here and give it to the National File, and they will publish it. And then everyone will know the truth, except that no one knows that there's a thing called the National File, and they forgot to find out, and they didn't read anything. So anyway, I don't wonder whether he ever bothered to try to find out who was that mole. Although they probably very shortly thereafter went to work for National File. That would probably be a pretty good clue as to who it was. All right. That was of some interest. What's happening here? Right. This I took from Right Wing Watch, the tweet of Right Wing Watch, which lets us all know that loopy lady from Florida, Laura Loomer, who just ran for Congress for the second time. I believe it's only the second time. It may be the third. Who knows? But she ran in the primary, as Greg told us the other day, against incumbent Republican Dan Webster, and lost rather convincingly, except to herself, of course. She's convinced that she actually won. And I guess this is just the next step of big lie progression. The bigger lie now, not only that I won, I really won the election, is she's taking it a little, or at least rhetorically, a step further. So some capture of her page from some social media of some kind. I don't know which one it is. I can't identify it. Doesn't matter. It might even be one of the big ones that she's not banned from, but I think she's banned from most things. And I don't know. Anyway, this is the deal. Laura Loomer, the right-wing watch folks say, refuses to accept her primary loss. And, well, I'll just read you the lengthy screed that she sent around on whatever social media this was. The congressional seat in Florida's 11th district is mine for the taking, and I will be the congresswoman from Florida's 11th district. I actually am the congresswoman in Florida's 11th district, and everyone knows it. Now, that's really interesting because, of course, the general election hasn't been held yet. And so, I mean, the congressperson from Florida's 11th district is the incumbent, Dan Webster. Now, I understand this whole thing, I won the election, etc., but of course it was a primary, and it may very well be the case that in Florida's 11th district, it's a foregone conclusion that the Republican wins. I understand all of that. But, I mean, they haven't held the election yet. So, to say, it's mine for the taking, that's one thing, I guess, but never mind mine for the taking, I already took it, is kind of another. But that's it. So everyone should just declare yourself Congress members now. I actually am the congresswoman in Florida's 11th district, and everyone knows it. I'm not going anywhere except Washington, D.C., and maybe back to school to learn how to put an apostrophe in the word I'm. But am not going, maybe is what she meant. Am not going anywhere except Washington, D.C., and she forgot the comma there, too. Florida's 11th district is my home, and I'm leaving it to go to Washington, D.C., for whatever reason. And I am going to keep fighting for the people here who have zero representation thanks to the feckless GOP establishment and voter fraud. Okay. There's more. Daniel Webster is illegitimate, and my team and I will work to drive him into the ground, goodness, every step of the way until he collapses in disgrace or poor health and resigns like he should have years ago. The fight is not over. The people are with me. I mean, they weren't. When we were counting up how many people were with you, they weren't with you. But they're with her now, I'm sure. The people are with me, and I will never stop fighting for them. I love my volunteers, my supporters, my staff, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for them and all of you except concede defeat. The reality is, Dan Webster's health is worse than Joe Biden's. Everyone who has seen him recently knows it's true. His health is drastically failing. He is demented, looks ill. He can barely speak. He wears a life alert. Ooh, that's big news in Florida. And I'm willing to bet he doesn't survive before his current term is over, or he pulls an early retirement and the good old boys try to handpick another corrupt successor. Little bit of a syntactical mess there, but we know what she's saying. We will not allow them to get away with that. They think I'm leaving, and guess what? I'm not. And she's got the apostrophe in both of those I'ms there, so I know she's capable. Either way, there's a second page. Either way, I'm going to keep exposing the corruption and fight against it all. I will continue to push Daniel Webster to his absolute physical limits till he resigns in disgrace, since the GOP establishment wants to prop up zombies with their voter fraud and big tech election interference machine. Arr. I will force him out so the people get the representation they deserve. I am not done fighting. I'm going to keep working on my federal RICO case against Twitter and Facebook. There you go. and work to prevent more stolen elections via big tech election interference, and work to expose the GOP establishment with my investigative journalism. She's going to do 9 jobs, including represent you in Congress. Now we go scorched earth. Now it starts. We go scorched earth on the GOP establishment and get even more aggressive in the America First hostile takeover of the Republican Party until our enemies are defeated. Luckily, I have an army behind me. Thank you. And there you go. It's from whoever. And on what, I don't know what social media is doing, allowing her on it, but there's the news. So she's the congresswoman from Florida's 11th district, and everyone knows it, including you now. So you're on notice, I guess, just how crazy she is. In other rotten, stinking Republican news, also from the New York Times, comes news that Ryan Zinke is making trouble again. Zinke is now accused of misleading the Interior Department, where he was formerly the secretary, and misleading the Interior Department investigators in a casino inquiry. A watchdog report stems from Zinke's tenure as Interior Secretary during the Trump administration. He's now seeking a House seat in Montana, and there's only one, I think, right, for Montana, so he's seeking that one, I guess. And everyone knows he is the congressman from Montana and something. Maggie Astor is the reporter for this one here. Ryan Zinke, former Interior Secretary during Trump administration, intentionally misled investigators. Looking into his department's decision not to act on 2 Native American tribes' requests to open a new casino in Connecticut. The Interior Department's Office of Inspector General concluded in a report released on Wednesday. Mr. Zinke, who served as, it's a funny sounding name, isn't it? Anyway, it sounds like a kid's show character. Mr. Zinke is here, everybody. Honka honka. like a clown. Mr. Zinke. All right. He served as Interior Secretary, in case you forgot, from 2017 to 2019. And he is now the Republican nominee for a congressional seat in Montana. He is widely expected to win the general election this November. The 44-page report on Wednesday focused not on the casino decision itself, litigation over that was resolved separately, but on whether Zinke and his former chief of staff had been honest about it. Well, obviously not, but let's get to the bottom of exactly why, and why Montanans will therefore want him as their Republican representative in Congress. That seems obvious. Also, by the way, for those with long enough memory, speaking of power outages here at KITM, he's suspect in continuing to keep much of Puerto Rico without consistent and reliable power for like 4 years now, since which hurricane was it? I can't even remember anymore. They'll never forget in Puerto Rico, but they never really did restore power correctly there. And of course, a lot of that had to do with the fact that they never cared and never wanted to restore power there, except as it was a grifting opportunity for contracting companies that were never up to the job of restoring power in Puerto Rico, but whose senior leadership were personal friends with Ryan Zinke, who was in a position as Interior Secretary to steer the contracts their way. All right. Well, anyway, back to this story. Extensive reports, or rather efforts, by unnamed lobbyists to persuade Mr. Zinke not to approve the tribe's applications, as well as conversations between Zinke and an unnamed senator, are described in the report. It says that in interviews with investigators, Zinke denied having significant conversations with the lobbyists and stated separately that he had decided not to approve the tribe's applications based on advice from the Interior Department's Office of the Solicitor. But lawyers in that office told investigators that they had never spoken directly with Mr. Zinke. A lawyer for Mr. Zinke, Danny C. Honorato, said in a statement that Zinke had cooperated fully in a politically motivated investigation. Secretary Zinke repeatedly told the Inspector General that he was not subject to any influence in that matter because he lacked jurisdiction to act on that application. Mr. Honorato said. That should have ended the inquiry. Instead, On the eve of an election, the IG has released a misleading and inaccurate report that suggested Secretary Zinke lacked candor in his interview with IG agents. That is wrong. The report said it would be a fair reading of Secretary Zinke's statements to conclude that he had based his decision about the casino request on the advice of lawyers for the office of the solicitor and that he was not influenced by considerations or recommendations of third parties. Given the number and extent of communications with these outside personnel, combined with the absence of information that anyone, counsel or otherwise, within the agency advised this course of action, we find that Secretary Zinke's description of events was not accurate. The report continued. It characterized Zinke and his chief of staff as not complying with their duty of candor when questioned. Zinke's former chief of staff was not named in the report. A person who held that position, you could name him, did not immediately respond to a request for comment sent to the organization he currently works for. Lack of candor is defined in the report as a broader and more flexible concept than falsification, emphasizing that it does not necessarily require intent to deceive. Oh, well, that's good, because they'll never prove that. Rather, it requires proof that a person gave incorrect or incomplete information and did so knowingly. Wednesday's report is a final, revised version of a draft report that Zinke was given an opportunity to respond to. His response was included in the final version. The Office of Inspector General submitted its initial findings in 2018 to the Justice Department, which declined to file charges in 2021. What do you know? The office said in the final report that it would provide it to the current Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland, for any action deemed appropriate. And you know, it's interesting because she's a Native American herself. I'd be curious to know where this goes. Mr. Zinke has been the subject of multiple ethics investigations related to his actions as Interior Secretary. Earlier this year, the Office of Inspector General found that he had improperly participated in negotiations about a real estate project in Whitefish, Montana, and then lied to investigators about his involvement. And you know what's really great for politicians is lying about their involvement in real estate deals in something that begins with white anything, white fish, white water. It's all the same. Or, well, anything having to do with water. Anyway, fish, they live there. Anyway, before becoming Interior Secretary, Mr. Zinke represented Montana's at-large congressional district from 2015 to 2017. He's now running in the 1st district. Oh, this is interesting. So now Montana has gained enough population, I guess, to have a 2nd congressional district. Congratulations, everybody. In Montana. Good job, I guess. You're is that what Bob Brigham keeps complaining about, it being overpopulated for? That's funny. Anyway, he's now running in the 1st district, newly drawn after Montana gained a seat in the 2020 census. 3 major election forecasters, the Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Sabato's Crystal Ball, all rate the race as likely Republican, and a 4th, 538, rates it as solid Republican. But of course, the Republican, well, I mean, ideally the Republican themselves would be solid, but instead it's a corrupt idiot like Ryan Zinke. But you know how things go in some of these conservative districts. So, all right, he'll have to be investigated for ethics violations while member of Congress as well. So that's good news for you folks in Montana. You're going to be stuck with a corrupt loser. And, to the extent that you're listening to the show, then you probably care about this. But other than that, probably not. Okay, let's see. Other things that I might be able to share with you before the break? Well, let's see. That would probably take too long. I'll put that off until later. Oh, something from Charlie Savage that I hadn't previously. Oh, no, I see. A link from Charlie Savage to the full Barr memo. I don't think we're going to be able to read that before the next break either. Okay, let's see. A few other things that might be of interest. All right, let's see. Oh, here's a little bit of news that we might be able to fit in here. An interesting diversion from where we have been the last couple of days, back to Uvalde, Texas, where a $27 billion class action lawsuit has been announced for Uvalde victims and survivors. Charles Bonner of Bonner and Bonner Law is also representing victims in the Buffalo shooting. So we'll see how easy that is to do and how ethical the whole thing is pulled off. Some of the families affected by the Robb Elementary School mass shooting are now part of a major lawsuit. The class action lawsuit, which was announced on Sunday, I see, I get it now, is going after several law enforcement agencies as well as the manufacturer of the gun used in the massacre. Now you have something. What we intend to do is help serve this community, and that is to file a that's a weird sentence, that is to file a $27 billion civil rights lawsuit under our United States Constitution, one of a kind in the whole world, Attorney Charles Bonner of Bonner and Bonner Law said. It's not sounding so great, but okay, whatever. Look at this. The coverage locally is via Twitter from the account of Lee, L-E-I-G-H, Ms. Lee Waldman. How do you like that? No connection that I know of. Her bio, by the way, on Twitter begins by saying she's a queso connoisseur, so she's definitely not related to me. That can't possibly be the case. Anyway, Lee Waldman, it doesn't say where she reports. Oh, KSAT is her outlet. Anyway, the embedded tweet here says, tonight on the Night Beat, a $27 billion class action lawsuit announced on behalf of everyone affected by the Robb Elementary shooting. Attorney Charles Bonner is the lead filing attorney. I guess that's a picture of him here. And you can go and take a look if you are interested. If you need to know what Charles Bonner looks like, well, now's your chance. Okay, let's see. How come my monitor is out here and won't bring up my soundboard, which I'll need in 30 seconds. The civil rights attorney is holding no punches. We usually say pulling no punches. He intends to file a class action lawsuit against anyone who can be held responsible for what happened inside Robb Elementary on May 24th. And golly, there are so many of them, but I guess the police would be among them as well. So that's of some interest, but really I'm more interested in the suit against the gun manufacturer. I guess a prospect that would have been considered hopeless just a couple of years ago, but success in cases having to do with the 1214 massacre, as they called it. I don't know if they use the word massacre, but over in Sandy Hook, they refer to it just by the date, Greg says, in Newtown. But their success in court, I guess, has inspired others to take on gun manufacturers in the same way. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Well, I'm sad to report as I skim forward in this piece, I'm not certain where the language is coming from, or the mangling of the language, whether it begins with Charles Bonner or begins with reporter Lee Waldman here, or whether both of them are responsible for the mess that ensues. But it doesn't make me doesn't fill me with confidence about the prospects of the suit. It may be something that they might get. I mean, the progress made in the suits against the manufacturers of the guns used in Newtown is, I mean, it's a great new development, and I'm hoping it'll be used effectively elsewhere. But I'm having doubts about whether or not this is where it's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. I'll read you verbatim, of course, what's being reported here on the KSAT site. There was the first tip that the attorney here was saying, it's a $27 billion civil rights lawsuit under our United States Constitution, one of a kind in the whole world, which, arguably not really true. But anyway, just a throwaway phrase, but one that, I don't know, signals a certain type of approach to legal matters, let's say. So here we go. Right, then there was the weird usage that I attributed to the reporter. The civil rights attorney is holding no punches. He intends to file a class action lawsuit against anyone who can be held responsible for what happened inside Robb Elementary on May 24th. And there are a lot of people who were responsible for a lot of failures, true. but I don't know that they all belong in the same case. But okay, we can have room for debate on that. But now this is where things start to go off the rails in the reporting and the description of things, and it's like Lionel Hutz is, intervening in this case here. So here he is describing, of course, who's responsible. We have the school police, okay? Arredondo, who was just fired, right? The school police chief. We have the city police, and we have the sheriffs, and we have the Texas Rangers, the DPS, and we have the Border Patrol, Bonner said. Now, they were all there. That's true. The defendants also include gun manufacturer Daniel Defense and Oasis Outback. I don't think I know anything about them, but, they're gun manufacturers. These, of course, are where the gunman bought the weapon used in the shooting. Oasis Outback must be the store that he bought his Daniel Defense weapon through. Okay. That wasn't so bad. How about this? There will be some institutional defendants as well, such as school board, or such as city council, or such as the city of Uvalde, Bonner said. Bonner and his associates have been traveling to Uvalde from their California office for weeks, meeting with families at Pastor Daniel Myers' church, Tabernacle of Worship. Up to right now, there's been no accountability. There's no justice for those 19 children and the 2 teachers, Myers said. The suit is being filed on constitutionality. As Bonner said, the victims, survivors, and their families had their 14th Amendment rights violated. Yes, in a manner of speaking, but that the suit is being filed on constitutionality? Okay, I mean, yeah. People have a right to life under the 14th Amendment. And what we've seen here is that the law enforcement agencies have shown a deliberate, conscious disregard of the life, Bonner said. Bonner's law firm is taking on this class action suit with a team of other firms, including a local Uvalde law office and Everytown, a gun safety organization. So maybe they'll bring in some better spokespeople at a minimum, if not lawyers. He said it's a big undertaking, one he believes is necessary to save lives. Everyone in this world are hurting and bleeding about what is happening here in Uvalde. And it's up to us to make sure it doesn't happen again, Bonner said. The lawsuit is still being drafted. Good, then we can make some corrections. He'll need to file claims in the next few days. What? He'll need to file claims in the next few days before it is filed. He'll need to file before he files. I mean, that could be true in a manner of speaking, but okay. It'll be filed in September when the Department of Justice is done with its investigation into the shooting, he said. Wow. All right, well, that was a bit of a mess, but, whatever. I don't know what to tell you. But, okay. Well, it needs some work all around. But, okay, I wanted to at least put you on notice that this was a thing that was happening, and it's a good thing now that people are attempting to hold gun manufacturers and gun sellers accountable in the aftermath of some of these tragedies. I think that's the direction. There'll be more and more success as people head in that direction as time goes on, and I'm glad to see the ball being advanced, I think, here. We'll see in the end. All right, let's head back over to the various issues swirling around the former guy and things that he did way back when, things that he's still involved in. Empty Wheels, tweet thread from yesterday I put aside on the Barr memo, her particular take on one angle of the Barr memo, which was that the Barr memo, she says, relied on covering up the ongoing Roger Stone conspiracy investigation. And she links, of course, to her piece on it, and I'm wondering whether we're better off reading the piece or reading the thread about the piece. Or maybe both. Let's see. Well, we'll go over to the blog and see what's up here and read this piece. DOJ has released, of course, the memo that Ed O'Callahan and Stephen Engel used to claim there wasn't evidence to charge Trump with obstruction. You all know the background here. A key part of it is the claim that the evidence in Volume 1 was conclusive, that there wasn't evidence to charge any of Trump's flunkies with conspiring with Russia. That passage included here in a screen grab. The special counsel's obstruction theory would not only be novel, but based on his own analysis, it would also be unusual because Volume 1 of the special counsel's report is conclusive that the evidence developed was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign, including the president, conspired or coordinated with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election. Given that conclusion, the evidence does not establish a crime or criminal conspiracy involving the president toward which any obstruction or attempted obstruction by the president was directed. It would be rare for federal prosecutors to bring an obstruction prosecution that did not itself arise out of a proceeding related to a separate crime. Moreover, much of the president's potentially obstructive conduct amounted to attempts to modify the process under which the special counsel investigation progressed, rather than efforts to impair or intentionally alter evidence, documentary or testimonial, that would negatively impact the special counsel's ability to obtain and develop evidence. Now back to Empty Wheel, who says, only at least Callahan knew that the evidence wasn't conclusive. On page 178, the Mueller report they claimed was conclusive revealed that they had referred Stone for further investigation into whether he had conspired with Russians to hack. And here it reads, the office determined that it could not pursue a Section 1030 conspiracy charge against Stone for some of the same legal reasons. The most fundamental hurdles, though, are factual ones. And there's a footnote here, 1279, which reads, some of the factual uncertainties are the subject of ongoing investigations that have been referred by this office to the U.S. Attorney's Office. DOJ covered that footnote up for another 20 months, by the way, releasing it only the day before the 2020 election. And from that point forward, Barr had to make sure that DOJ wouldn't pursue that investigation into Stone because it would expose the lie at the core of his cover-up. And that's actually all that she has in this piece, so I'm guessing that to make more sense of it, maybe we'll be able to make more sense of it by reading the thread that she wrote about it. We, of course, began with the title of the piece that she was tweeting around. The Barr memo relied on covering up the ongoing Roger Stone conspiracy investigation. There's so much in this Barr memo that explains the nature of Barr's subsequent cover-ups, including the Jensen investigation, about which I know nothing. E.g., she says, Flynn told Kislyak directly that, quote, the boss knows about the calls. And there's a screen grab in here as well from the report that says there is no clear evidence that the president knew of Flynn's conversation with Kislyak or that he had misrepresented it to the vice president prior to McGahn. Something, I guess, speaking about it. This is how DOJ's very top officials, she writes in all caps, described shutting down an investigation into a hostile foreign power that attacked the U.S. This wasn't about Trump at all. It was about Russian hackers. What does this screen grab say? The special counsel considers, for example, this is from the memo talking about the Mueller report. The special counsel considers, for example, whether the president obstructed justice by asking the White House counsel to direct the firing of the special counsel, by asking Corey Lewandowski to contact the attorney general and seek his assistance in narrowing the special counsel's investigation, and by asking asking the attorney general to reverse his recusal. We're still talking about what's his name? Gosh, I'm blanking on the senator turned attorney general's name already. I've blotted him out from my memory. Sessions, that's right. Okay. And by asking Attorney General Sessions to reverse his recusal and to supervise the special counsel's investigations. Okay. And Marcy continues, remember that Barr 3 times in his confirmation hearing, said trading a pardon for false testimony would be obstruction. Remember that Barr treated witness tampering with Randy Credico, remember him, to cover up stuff Trump knew about as a technicality. Another screen grab in here. The president's actions on these matters more directly implicate the concerns of the obstruction statute. If the president were to perjure himself, tamper with witness testimony, or corruptly destroy evidence, then such actions would violate well-established law, but we do not believe that any of the actions described in the report would meet such a standard. None of these instances indicate that the president sought to conceal evidence of criminal conduct, nor is there sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he sought to provide false evidence to the investigators, concludes this memo. At the time top DOJ officials wrote this, Mueller had already obtained a warrant for a notebook that Stone had, recording all of his conversations with Trump during the 2016 elections. Pretty sure there's Bannon grand jury testimony about it too. And another screen grab here from the memo that says, let's see, Flynn, Manafort, Stone, or Cohen, so I guess trying to get to them to encourage them not to, quote, flip, should be viewed as an obstruction of justice. Well, what about that? The report makes clear that the president equated a witness's decision to flip with being induced by prosecutors to manufacture false evidence against others. We cannot say that the evidence would prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the president's statements, most of which were made publicly, were intended to induce any of those witnesses to conceal truthful evidence or to provide false evidence. Once again, this conclusion is buttressed by the absence of any clear evidence that these witnesses had information that would prove the president had committed a crime. Okay, conclusory, but there it is. The other cray-ass thing, Marcy says about this, which I noted already, is that Barr was declining prosecution of a crime in progress. Before Stone got his pardon, he said repeatedly he had covered up the content of 30-ish conversations about WikiLeaks and Russia. At the time Barr wrote this, there was still an ongoing investigation into whether an Egyptian bank gave Trump $10 million in September of 2016, which kept his campaign afloat. It may have been a pass-through. So what was being written at the time? This excerpt. The special counsel's thorough investigation did not establish that the president committed any underlying crime related to Russian interference. And then, but apparently there was. Again, once Barr declined prosecution on the memo, he had to make sure that all the other investigations were killed, all of them, no matter the cost to America. In the summer of 2020, when he believed Trump would lose, per a recent interview, investigations into Eric Prince, 2 investigations into Manafort, and an investigation into this Egyptian bank, and at least 1 investigation into Stone, all killed. Thanks, she says, to Jason Leopold for liberating the evidence of this by litigating for the release of the Barr memo. All right. Well, very interesting, although, again, she sort of dives in places where, the background was laid earlier in earlier posts. So, I don't know. It's a familiar problem with reading through Marcy's detail of things sometimes. You miss other pieces of the story that she may have explained in the past and just assumes you were reading along. But at any rate, I think we can tell the general direction that this stuff is going. The Barr memo, I mean, it is a true embarrassment. And perhaps in reading other analyses of it, it will make more sense than just the analysis is able to make by having checked in with Marcy from time to time. I'm hopeful that that's the case. Let's see. Other things I wanted to share with you. This is an odd sort of story. Not exactly a total shift in gears, but a different area of inquiry and something you probably should know about before the weekend. From Bolt's magazine, which has this piece from Jessica Pishko, "The Big Lie Messengers Who Carry a Badge and Gun." Sort of an interesting inquiry into another branch of this whole mess here. Arizona's Mark Lamb. I'll go on. This is the subheader. Arizona's Mark Lamb and a network of far-right sheriffs, yes, the constitutional sheriffs and their like, around the country are partnering with leading purveyors of election fraud conspiracies, part of an escalating campaign to police the vote. And there's a lot of meaning packed into that, police the vote. Many ways you could see that. All right. Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, Pinal, P-I-N-A-L, Arizona, walked out to standing applause at Donald Trump's July 22nd rally in Prescott, Arizona, wearing his usual cowboy hat and blue jeans getup and flashing a blindingly white smile. He waved and pumped a fist as he stepped to the podium, asking that everyone doff their hats, even the big cowboy hats, and remain standing for a brief moment of silence in honor of a sheriff's deputy shot and killed the previous month around Prescott before quickly pivoting to the former president. I see what they mean here. They're pivoting to the former president to talk about him and how awesome he is. But it made me, just for the briefest of moments here, say, they're standing in honor and silence of a sheriff's deputy shot and killed the previous month, and then pivoted to the president. Well, he wasn't shot and killed last month, so why would you do that? Well, there's always hope, I suppose. Anyway, I can see that you guys love the rule of law and law enforcement because you all stormed the Capitol on January 6th. And we appreciate that, Lamb told the crowd. Do you know who else loves the rule of law? Hitler. No, Donald Trump, he said without irony, urging them to support a slate of Trump-endorsed candidates for state office who echo the lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him. The sheriff also touted his new effort to monitor elections with True the Vote, a far-right group peddling unfounded voter fraud conspiracies that have overtaken the Arizona GOP, as we like to call it. We're going to make sure that we have election integrity this year, Lamb declared. Now, how do we know he was elected sheriff? One wonders. But, moving on from there. Sheriffs are going to enforce the law. This is about the rule of law. It is against the law to violate election laws. This is a very learned sheriff here. And that's a novel idea. We're going to hold you accountable for that. We will not let happen what happened in 2020. Okay. Big lie messengers have looked to far-right sheriffs for a veneer of credibility as both Democratic and Republican election officials, prosecutors, judges, and state attorneys general across the country reject every baseless lawsuit blaming Trump's loss on voter fraud. True the Vote founder Catherine Engelbrecht, who, as Reveal has reported, helped turn election conspiracies into a lucrative enterprise for conservative activists and lawyers, has said she turned to sheriffs for help after federal and state law enforcement dismissed her group's claims because they were dumb and baseless. True the Vote's partnership with Lamb and a coalition of right-wing sheriffs he leads and helped found, called Protect America Now, because when else would you protect America, which includes sheriffs from states as politically diverse as California, New Mexico, Indiana, Massachusetts, and Florida, is part of a nationwide attempt to police elections by emboldening sheriffs to surveil ballot drop boxes and chase down tips from anonymous hotlines that will report alleged fraud. Last month, Engelbrecht also announced that her group would partner with the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, a different but similar group of so-called constitutional sheriffs who believe that their office is uniquely endowed with the power to enforce only those laws they deem constitutional and who have promoted the big lie in rallies and training sessions. Of course, one might say, as they often do, show me in the Constitution where it says anything about sheriffs at all. And the answer is, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Shut up. You're a communist. Sheriffs affiliated with the CSPOA have promised to monitor future elections and hunt down lingering claims of fraud from the 2020 presidential elections. They will not let go of that. These partnerships highlight the uniquely aggressive role of sheriffs in efforts to police the vote leading up to the 2022 and 2024 elections. Politicians With badges and guns, sheriffs have extensive powers to launch criminal investigations, seize evidence, and even threaten violence or jail to force compliance, making them uniquely potent as compared to judges or prosecutors or legislators. As they perpetuate conspiracies about fraud that have inspired increased threats against election administrators and volunteers, the True the Vote sheriffs are also in a unique position to widen their reach, using the environment they helped create as justification for more policing, just what we need in this country. The prospect of increased involvement of armed officers recalls the days of voter intimidation in the Jim Crow South and beyond, and could also help encourage extremist vigilante violence by perpetuating baseless rumors of fraud, often against black and, we'll say, just skip over the fact that they use Latinx, I guess. Latine, we'll say, communities. Yeah, and I mean, eventually, I guess this must get around to the major point of, if you are a local elections official just trying to do your job and do it right, and you're being threatened by right-wing lunatics who say, you're drinking the blood of Christian babies and altering the vote, and I demand your ouster, and in fact, I now threaten to kill you and your family because of what you're doing, and you call the police and say there's been this threat made against me, and the police who answer the phone say, well, you are drinking the blood of Christian babies and you should be assassinated, that would be kind of frightening. You wouldn't really want that to happen. But it threatens to happen right here. I mean, if the sheriff says, I believe all this stuff, where are you going to turn for protection? Let's continue with the article, though. Devin Berghart, who analyzes far-right social movements with the Institute for Research and Education on Human Rights, called True the Vote's partnership with right-wing sheriffs old-school voter intimidation. It is that as well. Of course, the specter of law enforcement at the polls is already enough to discourage people from going to the polls, Berghart told Bolts. Moreover, the threat of surveillance of polling places and drop boxes proposed by groups like True the Vote is meant to intimidate voters, particularly people of color, and deter them from casting ballots. Since announcing his partnership with election deniers, Lamb has pushed for police surveillance of ballot drop boxes in Pinal County and vowed to investigate ballot, quote, mules, a reference to the Dinesh D'Souza movie 2000 Mules, which uncritically documents True the Vote's bungling and widely debunked efforts to prove massive fraud by arguing that unnamed non-profit groups are abusing ballot drop boxes and in violation of state laws. As Lamb said at a recent True the Vote sponsored meeting in Arizona, we are going to make sure people did not come in and put more ballots in the boxes than they should, and I think that's a simple thing the sheriff can oversee. Maybe. We'll see. As he continues to blur the line between right-wing celebrity and local lawman, Lamb's hometown critics say he is antagonizing people who oppose his political affiliations. Those tensions started to boil over in the fallout from a series of errors with ballots in Pinal County during Arizona's August 2nd primary elections, mistakes that appear to stem from high turnover and a staffing crunch in the local elections department, as VoteBeat has reported. And you see this is something that then feeds on itself. Keep threatening to kill the elections officials, they'll quit. When they're replaced with people who are, go into it eyes wide open, perhaps, about the nature of the threats, but who haven't really been trained, well, those are the people who are most likely to make mistakes, and then those mistakes are things that these same right-wing lunatics seize upon to make the next round of threats. It wasn't a mistake. You were trying to steal the election for Joe Biden. Well, we were counting the votes for dog catcher of Pinal County. I don't see how that was going to help Joe Biden any, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm threatening to murder you. Okay, well, then I quit. Dozens of people from both political parties flocked to the Pinal County Board of Supervisors meeting held the day after this month's primary to express their waning trust in local elections. Some also accused Lamb, who did not grant an interview or respond to questions for this story, accused him of exacerbating the issue with baseless fear-mongering over fraud, including Roberto Reveles, a longtime civil rights activist in the state. Reveles said that Lamb is increasingly antagonistic against people who criticize his political affiliations on the far right or his baseless rhetoric about voter fraud. I recently was subjected to the intimidation referred to by a previous speaker, he told the county board during the same meeting. Sheriff Mark Lamb walked up to me, pointed at me, and said, "You and your fellow Democrats are destroying our country," just like a sheriff should, right? Very interesting. The current wave of sheriffs announcing their involvement in policing elections started when Engelbrecht trumpeted True the Vote's partnership with the CSPOA during a press conference and training event at a Las Vegas hotel on July 12th, held to coincide with, quote, Freedom Fest, a libertarian-style conference. CSPOA was founded in 2011 by Richard Mack, the ex-sheriff of a small Arizona county and a former board member with the Oath Keepers, a militia group, you know all about them, with members charged with playing a central role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Mack has for years been steadfast in promoting the conspiracy theory of massive voter fraud. Every single election since forever has been subject to massive fraud.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. I need to check in on things too. I think that it will happen after the show, but I'm just checking to see whether it might have happened early. But today is the scheduled release. I think the deadline is noon. Scheduled release of the redacted version ordered by the magistrate judge down there in Florida. The redacted version of the affidavit underlying the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago. But I think everybody is just still anticipating this. Yeah, due by noon. Empty Wheels explanation here, and I don't think we need that much background in order to understand this tweet. For those asking, it is due by 12, and remember, though, that it will be heavily redacted, and you'll probably be disappointed. About 100 journalists will post it here when it files. Kyle Cheney is often one of the first to get these things posted in case you want to keep an eye out. But, yeah, it's likely true that the thing will be heavily redacted and mostly useless, but I am curious to see whether they're able to make any hay out of it for Trump, because I think the fact that it will be so heavily redacted is, well, it offers them the opportunity to say, what are they hiding, of course. That always works for them. But the fact that it will be, I think, you'll see that it's very, very long. And even with all the redactions, you'll be able to see there seems to have been a very long recitation of evidence that made the search warrant inevitable and necessary at the same time. So we'll see how the sides are at spinning something that comes out that's so heavily redacted. And I mean, at some point, you have to wonder what was even the point of putting out something that was so heavily redacted. If you were releasing the affidavit with the hopes in mind of placating Republicans who were screaming, release the affidavit, what are you hiding? Well, I can tell you that a redacted version won't do the trick. It won't stop them. They'll just simply ask the question, what are your redactions hiding? Anyway, back to the constitutional sheriff's garbage that we were reading before. Richard Mack, the ex-sheriff of a small Arizona county who was the founder of the Constitutional Sheriff's Organization and also formerly a board member on the Oath Keepers. Mack joined Engelbrecht during the press conference and later participated in a Freedom Fest panel with other sheriffs, which they titled 2,000 Mules. Law enforcement has to step in at this point! Exclamation point at that. Will sheriffs, apostrophe S, that's incorrect, investigate? Engelbrecht has called True the Vote's budding relationship with right-wing sheriffs a divinely inspired stroke of luck after federal and state law enforcement dismissed her group's claims of widespread fraud. In other words, she had her day in court, both in state court and federal court, and everybody said, that's stupid, get the hell out of here. So she's going back to law enforcement where they don't necessarily ask, can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what you're saying is true? They just simply say, I feel like it, and I'm an elected official, and I'm just going to promote your theory regardless. It's when they get into court and they actually have to prove things where all this stuff falls apart. Well, anyway, once we had been burned by both the Federal Bureau of Investigation and state-level law enforcement, we realized we've got to take this more local, Engelbrecht said during the CSPOA's Las Vegas press conference. Or in other words, once we realized that the people with federal authority knew and could tell very easily that we didn't know what we were talking about, we went to the states, figuring maybe they're dumber than the federal government and they'll believe us. And then it turns out that nobody at the state level believes us either, because we are, making unbelievable claims and have no evidence whatsoever for them. And then we realized maybe, again, we're dealing with people who are too smart for us. Let's try dumber local people. After this fails, they're basically going to have to go door to door looking for people and speak to individual family members. I understand your son doesn't believe us, but can we talk to you about this? All right. Once we had been burned by both the FBI and state-level law enforcement, we realized to take this more local. That's what Engelbrecht had said during the CSPOA's Las Vegas press conference. As God would have it, at about the same time, both Sheriff Mark Lamb of Pinal County, Arizona, and Sheriff Mack reached out. All of a sudden, it's like the lights went on. It's the sheriffs. That's who can do these investigations. That's who we can trust. And then later, when she's burned by them, she'll say, no. Engelbrecht was flanked by at least two other sheriffs who have launched investigations into local elections officials back home in attempts to bolster right-wing and voter fraud conspiracies. One of the first sheriffs to target election workers following Trump's 2020 loss, Dar Leaf of Barry County, Michigan, I remember hearing his name, sent a private investigator to interrogate longtime election workers and urged other sheriffs in the state to seize voting machines. No charges were filed, and the local prosecutor said, "We do not have any police reports or requests for charges of any crimes." Also in attendance during the panel was Christopher Schmaling, I don't know how he pronounces it, sheriff of Racine County, Wisconsin, who investigated nursing home residents who voted in 2020 and accused state election commissioners of breaking the law. Officials there also declined to bring any charges. What sheriffs like Leaf and Schmaling plan to do with the assistance of True the Vote isn't entirely clear. We'll collect money from them, probably, or plane tickets around the country to fancy venues where they'll speak about nothing. Engelbrecht and Lamb set up a website promoting a, quote, National Election Integrity Voter Hotline that promises to connect concerned citizens to sheriffs for quick evaluation of incoming information. As of this week, the hotline connects callers to a voice message saying that operators are overwhelmed and encouraging people to file complaints with True the Vote's website. In a promotional video posted to the website, Lamb wears a tactical vest while sitting next to Engelbrecht and says their partnership is aimed at bringing citizens and sheriffs together around the country to help preserve our vote. But I'm afraid that the citizens are going to shoot me, so I'm wearing a tactical vest. Naturally, Engelbrecht also encourages people to hit the website's big red donate button. Many of the claims made by True the Vote sheriffs appear to be embellished and are causing friction with other local officials and their constituents. A week before he appeared in Las Vegas, Sheriff Calvin Hayden of Johnson County, Kansas, met with local elections officials to push for the elimination of ballot drop boxes. According to a memo from Johnson County's chief legal counsel, Peg Trent, which was obtained by public radio station KCUR, the sheriff also asked that deputies be permitted to monitor vote counting and to transport ballots in unmarked vehicles, despite state law delegating the running and counting of elections to citizens who are elected and appointed to a range of local offices and boards to oversee those processes, not law enforcement. Trent wrote back to the sheriff, "My concern is that these requests give the appearance that the sheriff's office is attempting to interfere with an election and to direct a duly authorized election official as to how an election will be conducted." You know, separation of powers issue, essentially, on the local level. During this meeting, you inquired of county staff about prior elections, challenged the integrity of elections in Johnson County, and requested that local law enforcement participate in the current election procedures, Trent wrote. The ACLU of Kansas later responded to Hayden's demands with a statement saying, "The sheriff continues to engage in conduct that borders on intimidation of election officials, and his comments undermine confidence in Kansas elections." Hayden, who did not respond to a request for comment, has doubled down and said in a statement to local news that he shares the ACLU and Trent's concerns about fair and transparent elections. At the July CSPOA event, Hayden claimed the bipartisan pushback he's faced at home is itself a sign of suspicion. Both the president of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, whatever that's supposed to mean, have asked me to resign for looking at this, so I know I'm getting close, he said. They always say when you get close to the target, you start catching flack, like calls for your resignation because you're crazy. Yeah, sure. I'm upsetting both sides. I must be doing something right. Well, you're doing the wrong thing correctly, if that's what you mean. Is that, do we get anywhere? You're doing the wrong thing very well. You're great at being terrible. But yeah, this is kind of concerning to say the least. And it's interesting though it's interesting how this develops, right? These sheriffs are, from their point of view, saying, I'm just trying to make sure that the law is being executed faithfully, essentially. The elections law that's supposed to lead to secure elections held with integrity is being observed. Except your role as the sheriff in making sure that happens is letting the people who have been elected and appointed to the offices that have responsibility for executing these laws are able to do so, A, in safety, and then B, do their job correctly. If someone were to accuse them of doing it incorrectly, I suppose, and I'm certain that they will be accused of this, you might investigate. But it doesn't say anywhere that you're allowed to perform the job. I'm sure you're doing it in your mind. You're saying you want to do the job of transporting these ballots in order to guarantee that there's no tampering with the ballots in your mind. Except one of the problems with this kind of stuff is, okay, now the sheriff of Johnson County is personally assured that nobody tampered with the ballots because he transported them himself. But the sheriff of some other county doesn't care about that. Or some non-sheriff of that county. I didn't transport the ballots, so how do I know they were done, the transportation was done properly and with integrity? Well, I'm the sheriff and I tell you. Well, who cares? I think you're corrupt. So how do I know that these ballots weren't tampered with? And ultimately, you don't. Everybody gets to take a turn carrying. It's like the Olympic torch relay. Everybody carries the ballots 4 inches towards we could have a bucket brigade, I guess, to move the ballots now. And now everybody believes it, except, the one guy who just says, I still don't believe it. I don't know why. And there's no satisfying everybody. But if the basic issue here is, look, you ran to be sheriff. And congratulations. Now you get the badge and the gun and you oversee all the deputies and your job is, if somebody says the law has been broken here, you investigate it like a normal person and figure out whether it really has. You don't just take over functions. If you wanted to supervise the handling of ballots, you should have run for clerk of elections or clerk of the county or whatever it is, the position that oversees that stuff. But instead you ran for sheriff. But you want to be able to do everybody's job now. And your thinking is, well, I have a badge and a gun, so you have to let me do the job, or else I'll use the badge and gun to get you. That's not the way things work. We separate the powers in this country because if we just hand all the powers over to one guy with a gun, you're going to end up in a bad situation. That's called tyranny, and you don't want it. But it's good tyranny because it's mine. No, it really just doesn't work like that. Back to the article. Administrative problems that marred the August 2nd primary elections in Pinal County gave Lamb a golden opportunity to expand his rhetoric on voter fraud back home. Let's see what happened. The elections department printed and sent ballots without all relevant contests. A mistake, right? To thousands of voters, some of whom cast those ballots without realizing the oversight. That's not good. Those errors were compounded on Election Day when more than a dozen polling places ran out of ballots because elections officials failed to print enough ballots. Okay, but I mean, sometimes you can just print new ones off, but, I'm sure everybody's going to think that's a huge scandal. Later that week, the Pinal County Board of Supervisors fired their elections administrator, who had only been hired in March and was the third person to hold the job in the past 2 years, which might be part of the problem. In a video Lamb posted to the sheriff's office official Facebook page after the election, he assured citizens that he was on top of the problem, even though there was no hint of fraud. As far as the sheriff's office goes, we are committed to making sure that we look into this matter completely to make sure that it was nothing more than a terrible accident or mistake, he said. We want to make sure that that is where it stops. While problems in the August 2nd primaries stemmed from the failure to print correct and a sufficient number of ballots, Lamb's focus, somehow for whatever reason, drifted elsewhere. We will also be offering our services, thank you very much, to help look at the voter rolls, not your job. Lamb continued, repeating various True the Vote sound bites. We're committed to making sure that we will secure those ballot boxes. We will be watching videos to make sure that nobody's breaking the laws. We're going to do everything we can from the sheriff's office to help regain your trust. Lamb's language was more forceful in a later appearance in front of a crowd of election deniers, claiming, I got with our county recorder and I said, we want access to the videos of all the boxes. We want to ensure that there's video in all the boxes. Okay. And we will monitor those videos. Much of that appears to be bluster, at least for now. A representative for Virginia Ross, whom the Board of Supervisors recently appointed to be the Pinal County's new elections director, Virginia Ross, told Bolts in an email that the office has had no discussions with Lamb about monitoring voter rolls or drop boxes. Officials have also asked the former elections director of another Arizona county to conduct an independent review of the ballot mishaps. In public, at least, officials have given somewhat mixed messages about how much they want Lamb's help policing elections. At one Board of Supervisors meeting this month, County Attorney Kent Volkmer cautioned against using the sheriff's office to look into the problems during the recent primary, saying, we really don't want law enforcement doing the administrative review. It's not that they are not skilled. It's not that they are not talented. But when a uniformed cop sits down and asks you questions, people tend to get very, very nervous, and they tend not to want to answer any questions. At another meeting later that month, Volkmer struck a different tone after mentioning his office has been flooded with unspecified complaints of election crimes, saying, I also have a sheriff, who I believe is here, who sits ready, willing, and able to investigate any of these illegal actions. Lamb's critics in Pinal County worry that the ballot mishaps in the recent primary have emboldened the sheriff and his rhetoric about voter fraud. Ralph Achue, I guess, not, it sounds like he sneezed, but A-T-C-H-U-E. Achue, yeah. Achue, perhaps? Ralph Achue, president of the Democrats of Casa Grande and a one-time candidate for Arizona Senate, told Bolts that some residents fear that they could soon see Lamb and his deputies patrolling polling places. I hear from everybody that the line is being crossed, Achue said, completely blurred. it doesn't seem to be an empty concern given Lamb's comments since announcing his partnership with True the Vote. Lamb has insisted he's only involved in criminal matters related to elections, of which there were none during the August 2nd primary, save for a single person arrested on Election Day for harassing election workers over the lack of ballots. Lamb has cited the arrest to argue for more policing of the midterm elections. Why, we had to arrest one guy. So obviously, what if we have to arrest two? We're going to need to double the size of our force. We will probably have more deputies roaming around, Lamb said at the last Board of Supervisors meeting. We want to have a minimal presence, but at the same time, we will have a little stronger presence roaming around. Perhaps not surprisingly, Lamb sounded more combative talking about the issue in an interview with Newsmax earlier that week. Last week in the board meeting, I had probably 8 to 10 Democrats show up and absolutely blast me because I believe in the big lie, Lamb sneered, flanked by 2 American flags, and this time wearing a flak vest. It clearly shows that these folks don't care about election integrity, Lamb said before diving into a divisive rant on presidential politics. They're happy that their guy is in power, and right now they should care more than ever about because this guy's in office. Joe Biden and his administration is absolutely destroying America and freedom, and they're turning this into a country that we just don't recognize. And so I would think that they would want election integrity, the sheriff said, circling back to the issue. It shouldn't matter about your party, but unfortunately it does matter to them, and they have taken exception with me on it. But, that's not going to stop me from continuing to push for election integrity. He totally makes sense. And anyway, I think the takeaway is pretty obvious and scary. They can insinuate themselves into these situations, not just because of the badges they wear, but the guns that they carry and all that's implied by it. But I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. That subheader of Arizona's Mark Lamb and a network of far-right sheriffs are partnering with leading purveyors of election fraud conspiracies, part of an escalating campaign to police the vote, which I said had multiple meanings. I mean, there's policing, which they don't really need to do, but they really desperately want to do. Policing the polling areas to make sure no voter fraud is happening, like a black person shows up to vote or whatever. But there's also policing the vote, like when they say true the vote, like as a verb to doing something to the vote, meddling in it with police officers. Seems like a uniquely poor idea. And this idea that somehow, ultimately it's supposed to mean like that the sheriff gets more votes than you do by virtue of being the sheriff. I can determine that right there was an illegal vote. I say so because I have a gun, and who are you to fight me? Stop resisting. And that's some serious opportunity for some real meddling. And they only see it as, it's obviously enforcing the law, not breaking the law to do that, because I'm law enforcement. Therefore, the things I do are enforcing the law, not breaking the law. So yes, I shot 7 black people who were saying that they had the right to vote. And they did. But the point is they resisted my checking into whether or not they did. And so therefore, it's okay for me to have shot them because that's enforcing the law. How do I know? I'm law enforcement. Damn it. Law enforcement can't break laws. Everything they do enforces them by definition. If law enforcement does it, that means it's not illegal. Get it? So there you have it. Looking forward to having that happen in the midterm elections come November. All right, let's see. A couple of other things that we might be able to cram in, and I'm going to decide which one it's going to be, and I think it probably ought to be this one here, because it seems kind of odd and disturbing, and also because it's probably spot on, as Amanda Marcotte is responsible for it. From her latest from Salon, might not be her latest, I don't know. This is an interesting one. It will name a name that I am not familiar with, but maybe get you up to speed on what's going on. Andrew Tate. You know who this is? I didn't. Andrew Tate shows how fascists recruit online. Men, or in some cases, boys, fall victim to the insecurity to fascism pipeline. Do you have teenage sons? Maybe you want to listen up. Do you care about teenage sons? Maybe you want to listen up. Young men's dating woes attract them to online misogynists who then convert them to authoritarianism. Interesting subject. Andrew who? That's what most of the over 30 crowd, and I admit I'm over 30, said in response to the news that Andrew Tate had been banned from TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook after a spate of negative coverage and increasing concerns from parents and teachers, and you gotta listen to them, right, about the TikTok star's power over his followers. For adults who don't have teenage sons, the 35-year-old kickboxer turned TikTok star, and you should take your advice from kickboxers because they're tough and awesome, but as anyone was largely unknown, but as anyone in the high school and college age set could tell you, online he was an overnight sensation. Across the English-speaking world, parents and teachers grew increasingly alarmed, hearing teenage boys and young men parroting Tate's woman-hating rhetoric. One teacher on Reddit last week complained about boys saying stuff, we'll use that word, like, women are inferior to men. Women belong in the kitchen, Ms. whatever her name is, it's blanked out here, and refusing to read articles by female authors because, quote, women should only be housewives. In the thread, multiple teachers chimed in with their own stories about the adolescent fascination with Tate. Beyond arguing that women shouldn't be allowed to drive or work outside the home, Tate has bragged about beating a woman with a machete and praised Donald Trump for sexually assaulting women. His popularity is directly attributable to the profit motives of social media companies. As The Guardian demonstrated, if a TikTok user was identified as a teenage male, the service shoveled Tate videos at him at a rapid pace. Until the grown-ups got involved and shut it all down, Tate was a cash cow for TikTok, garnering over 12 billion views for his videos peddling misogyny so vitriolic that one almost has to wonder if he's joking. But he is very much not joking. Police in Romania raided the British-born Tate's Romanian home in April as part of an investigation into, you guessed it, human trafficking. Tate had previously said he likes living in Romania because he believes law enforcement looks the other way on sexual assault allegations. Parents, teachers, and anyone who cares about the well-being of young people should be worried. It's not just that Tate was spreading hateful ideas and encouraging violence against women, though that on its own is terrifying enough. It's that Tate is just the latest example of a way that the far-right figures lure in young men by preying on their insecurities. Once the influencers suck in these young men, they start redirecting audience energies toward fascist organizing. Seems fantastical, but let me go on. Tate is just a piece of a larger puzzle that explains, for instance, how so many otherwise normal young men get wrapped up in groups like the Proud Boys and actions like storming the Capitol on January 6th. The strategy is simple. Far-right online influencers position themselves as self-help gurus, ready to offer advice on making money, working out, or, crucially, attracting female attention. But it's a bait and switch. Rather than getting good advice on money or health, audiences are often hit with pitches for cryptocurrency scams or useless but expensive supplements. And even worse, rather than being offered genuine guidance on how to be more appealing to women, they're encouraged to blame women, and especially feminism, for their dating woes. It's certainly true that male privilege ain't delivering what it used to, Ash Sarkar writes in her piece about Tate for GQ. Women don't have to sit around waiting to be chosen anymore, but instead are often holding out for male partners who treat them with respect and dignity. One way for men to respond to this, which many do, is to embrace a more egalitarian worldview and become the partners women desire. But when Tate and other right-wing influencers like him offer male audiences instead, is an opportunity to lash out at feminism. They often dangle out hope of a return to a system where economic and social dependence on men forced women to settle for unsatisfying or even abusive relationships. Organizing with other anti-feminist men is held out as the answer to their problems. This bait and switch is all over the right-wing influencer world. Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes built a young male audience in large part by suggesting that he had the key to landing a trad wife, like traditional wife, which is far-right slang for wives who stay at home and assume a submissive role. In reality, McInnes's wife, by the way, is a successful publicist. Psychology professor turned right-wing influencer Jordan Peterson first rose to fame as a self-help guru with his book 12 Rules for Life. Never listen to anybody who has that. But anyway. But his audience is thrilled to him not for banal make your bed advice, but for proclamations such as recommending enforced monogamy on women as a cure for male anxiety. Until his social media ban, Tate was operating something called Hustler University, which promised, for $49 a month, to turn his audience into rich playboys, as he presents himself to be. I'm a little bit behind here, but got to play the outro music and get out of here once and for all. But once in the door, the young male audiences aren't just hit with sexist content, but drawn into a larger world of far-right bigotry and, in many cases, anti-democratic sentiment. McInnes's Proud Boys ended up being the vanguard of the Capitol insurrection. Peterson was recently suspended from Twitter and demonetized on YouTube for saying gender transition is Nazi medical experiment level wrong. Most of the coverage of Tate has focused on his misogyny, but as the group Hope Not Hate notes, they've been monitoring Tate for years due to his long history of extremism and his close association with major far-right figures. He's been linked with a number of far-right American and British influencers, and not just because he loves Trump. He's been photographed dining with former InfoWars anchor Paul Joseph Watson, who was recently recorded ranting about how he wishes to wipe Jews off the face of the earth. He's also associated with Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich, far-right trolls who pushed Pizzagate and similar hoaxes. Well, I might be able to finish this up here, but the 17-year-old kid who starts following Tate because he's titillated by TikTok videos espousing edgelord opinions about women doesn't know any of this. All he knows is that this cut guy with a loud mouth is promising that while politically incorrect, he's offering advice and opinions that can supposedly give a leg up socially and sexually.
Radio.com.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning.
Good point made here. It can be intoxicating for young men to try to navigate the confusing and scary world that's often full of rejection, doubly so when the message that they're getting is that the solution isn't to do hard personal work to make yourself a better catch, but instead to become angry and aggrieved at women for wanting a better deal for themselves. Wow. Well, stay tuned for Justice next.